The scene was gruesome. The details are horrifying. And the discovery, beyond heartbreaking. 2 children murdered in absolutely horrific ways, and prosecutors say it was their own mother, Lori Daybell, who conspired to do it. 7-year-old J.J. Vallow.
I put bound with duct tape, bruising to the arms, and abrasion to the neck. But ultimately, the cause of death was asphyxia by plastic bag over the head and duct tape over the mouth.
16-year-old Tylee Ryan.
Tylee's remains were received in 3 separate sealed bags. One of the bags, or 2 of the bags, were black body bags, and the third was a large brown paper bag. Essentially, I received Tylee's remains in multiple different bags.
Tonight, we revisit these brutal murders as our forensic experts break down the testimony regarding their autopsies, the burial sites, and the cause and manner of death, as we are live from Boise, Idaho, where the judge has banned cameras from the courtroom, but we are bringing you all the big moments with our correspondent Chanley Painter, who has been inside the courtroom, and we are playing audio recordings of the most compelling testimony as our in-depth coverage of Idaho versus Lori Daybell, the Doomsday cult mom murder trial, continues.
I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. This is going to be a tough hour. It's going to be another tough hour tonight. And the first question I have is, how could anyone do what was done to J.J. Vallow? This trial isn't about what happened, because the jury is learning about what happened, and it's bad. The question is, who's responsible? Who was the one who did it? Who conspired to do it? But that first question, really think about this. How can anyone do that? This is a 7-year-old boy, special needs, loves to smile, loves to run around, active little guy. 7 years old, what a great age. What an amazing age. And someone duct taped his mouth, bound him, put a plastic bag over his head so he would suffer and fight for every last breath. How could anyone do that? You ask yourself that, but the reality is, we know someone did. Someone did that to J.J. Vallow. Another question is, why would anyone do what they did to Tylee Ryan? Why would you take her life? 16 years old, getting ready for that next phase of life, on her way to adulthood, dismember her, and then take the dismembered body parts, put them in a bucket, put accelerant on it, and set it on fire? Why would anyone do that? We know someone did. And as you listen to the prosecution's case here, you know, I don't know if that question is really answered. Like, why to that extreme? And why take their lives to begin with? But it seems to me that it's getting clear. But the brutality of all of this is beyond what we've seen in many murder cases, including cases of passion. Like, what is this? I'll tell you what it is. It's a sick conspiracy. And the question is, if what prosecutors are arguing here is true, what is wrong with these people? These are people who are going to church. You've got this guy, Chad Daybell, writing about, you know, how to be a better person, how to raise your kids. What? And then a mother and an uncle? This is sick, sick stuff. And I have a question. Because all this information is coming out inside that courtroom. You don't get to see it. You get to hear it. Where are Lori Daybell's tears? They're talking about her children. All of this brutal, brutal stuff. You listen to the jailhouse calls, the descriptions in court of her demeanor. Why is she not broken up, breaking down every day inside that courtroom, knowing what this case is about and hearing this kind of evidence? How could she even sit there and not just like completely lose it emotionally? No, those are your children. She gave birth to Tylee. She took on the job of adopting this special little boy to give him a second chance. Inexplicable. Inexplicable. We're going to get into all these details, but like we do every night at this time, we're going to take you live to Boise because Court TV legal correspondent Chanley Painter, our eyes and ears inside that courtroom, joining us live from Boise tonight. Chanley, before we get into your three big moments, just big picture stuff. I mean, this mother, as she's listening to all this stuff, is she like hunched over? Is she crying? Is she like beside herself? Is she like losing it? Or is she sitting there and dabbing?
She did a couple of times sit there and dab yesterday as J.J. Vallow's graphic autopsy photos were shown to the jury, and then later in the afternoon, Tylee Ryan's remains. Today inside the courtroom, she did have a solemn, serious, almost defeated type of body language as she tries to look down. She didn't really look at any of the photos today, but she's not beside herself. She's not uncontrollable. She's, again, in breaks, smiling, chatting, laughing with her attorneys, passing notes, looking at the gallery. And then her demeanor did seem to fit, though, today, the testimony and the seriousness of what was being said, but she was not overly emotional at all.
Yeah, and there's, to me, if that's your child, there is no break. There's no break. If that happened to your children, and this is what this whole thing is about, there's not a break. But anyway, thank you, Chanley. All right, this is the part of the show. You tell us about the three big things that we should know about today from out in Boise. What do you have for number one?
Well, it was a busy day in the courtroom with the prosecutors calling 8 witnesses, Vinnie. So this jury attentive throughout the day, mostly surrounding forensic evidence, but the day ended with the sister of Tammy Daybell. So now the prosecution state evidence is going in that direction of how Tammy died and her exhumation. We expect to hear more about that tomorrow. So what a witness to end the day on. Within like the last few minutes, we hear from Samantha William right there. This is her leaving court earlier today, and she had some insights into who her sister was. In fact, Samantha was contacted by the authorities to help identify where the pet cemetery was in Chad Daybell's backyard, and that's what she testified to. But she also told the jury that Tammy was a person who was kind of an introvert, but she loved animals and she loved people, and that she was very close to her sister, and she became emotional when she was asked to, of course, identify a photo of Tammy that then was displayed on the big screen in the courtroom for everyone to see. But there was a moment she was asked how she learned that Tammy died. Let's listen.
Chad called me the morning that she passed away.
Do you recall what he told you?
He told me that she had been really sick and that she'd been coughing all night, and had gotten up and with a coughing fit around midnight, 1 o'clock, and had gone back to sleep. And he was awakened by her that morning when she rolled out of bed dead.
Did that make any sense to you?
No, because I had just seen her 2 weeks previous to that, and she hadn't been she wasn't that sick at all. She was very healthy.
Did she indicate to you any activities that she was participating in?
Yeah, she was in a clogging class, and she was showing us some of her clogging moves, but she was also preparing to run a smaller race in their town, so she was trying to stay fit and healthy.
And how old was she?
She wasn't 50 yet. We were going to get ready to celebrate her 50th birthday.
Her birthday is May 4th coming up. She would be 53 this year, Vinnie. And so her testimony basically saying Chad just calls her. Tammy had been coughing that night, had a coughing fit around midnight, and then he was awakened when her body rolled off the bed. Remember in opening statements, though, when the prosecutor said that there will be evidence presented to this jury where Chad moved her body?
So, did she say that Tammy was doing karate classes?
Clogging.
Oh, clogging. Okay.
Clogging. The dance clog is the type of dance clogging,
Okay.
and she was also preparing for a run.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's physical stuff as well. A clogging class. She's getting ready to run a race, and then she coughs, and then she just passes away and rolls off the bed dead. Absurd. The absurdity of that, I think, won't be lost on this jury. We'll see. Unbelievable. So, what else do you have tonight?
Okay, so we also have more testimony, of course, of Samantha, because she revealed some insights into her sister. And she was asked about whether or not Tammy was expressing suspicions that her husband, Chad, was having an affair. And she answers that, but also talks about some unusual or how the marriage between Chad and Tammy, in her eyes, changed in the months before. Let's watch.
Did Tammy ever indicate to you that she had suspicion that Chad was having an affair?
No, she never said anything about it. If she did have any inkling, I think he probably brushed it away.
Did you notice any change in Chad and Tammy's relationship?
Yes, they stayed with us the first week in June of 2019, and something seemed off. They were very awkward at our house, and Chad wouldn't converse with my husband like they normally do. It just seemed really strange, and we weren't sure what was going on.
Were there any other instances where things seemed a little off?
Yes, in my birthday in July, Tammy showed up at my front door to give me my birthday present. I didn't even know they were in town, and he stayed in the car the whole time with it running. So she literally stood in my house for 5 minutes to talk, and then they just left it. He didn't even bother to come in and say anything. It was really weird.
And that was of 2019?
Yes.
Had you and Chad had any kind of a falling out?
No.
And that's how her direct ended today. She will be back on the stand tomorrow for a more direct and cross-examination, Vinnie, but she's saying that Tammy never expressed any suspicion of an affair Chad was having to her, which kind of contradicts what Melanie Gibb testified to, that within the last couple of weeks of Tammy's life, that she was suspicious of the affair and had a dark spirit at that time also take over her. We know coming up that we'll hear more testimony tomorrow about Tammy Daybell's death, how she was exhumed, Vinnie, and maybe possibly more family members. According to a source close to the proceedings, Garth was expected to testify, but we're learning that he was released from that. Remember, he was there the night that his mother passed away, and we know that the children believe that she was healthy, that she was sick. I'm sorry, that Tammy was suffering. She was suffering something, sick at the time that she did pass away. So it'll be interesting what more we learn tomorrow and maybe next week.
That description of that moment where they pull up to the house and Tammy just goes, gives her a gift. I mean, strange behavior. We know things are really strange. My guess is that maybe she didn't want to share that with her sister. They've been married for 28 years, and your families probably spend a lot of time together. Maybe they all have kids that spend time together, and maybe she wasn't comfortable speaking with her sister about any suspicions that she may have had, and was just trying to work things out. I'll work things out. We've been together 28 years. I get that. So that's interesting, really interesting insight. But I heard the emotion from her as well on that witness stand. You can hear it. You can hear it coming through. What do you have for number 3 tonight?
Okay, so most of the witnesses today, Vinnie, 7 of them revolved around the forensic testing in this case. And I'm a nerd and I love this part of any case, but I know most people just find it not as fascinating. But there were some big revelations, if you want to call it that, from the DNA testing and what was found on certain items seized on that property right there. And there was a DNA expert who testified that she received about 18 tools from Chad Daybell's backyard to test for biological evidence, and she did find some biological evidence like charred flesh and what she tested to be blood on some tools. And here's her findings for Tylee's DNA. It was found on a shovel, on a pickaxe, and on the pickaxe handle, Tylee's DNA. So, her biological, charred remains on the shovel pickaxe, and then her blood on the handle of the pickaxe. Also for Lori's brother, Alex Cox. We had all been suspicious and kind of expecting this, but his fingerprint is on the duct tape that was used to tape down the big plastic trash bag covering JJ's body when he was unearthed from Chad Daybell's backyard, Vinnie.
That's enormous. That's confirmation. That you put 2 and 2 together, right? His cell phone is pinging over there. Fingerprints on the duct tape that covered JJ's mouth, on the plastic bag that he's bound in. I mean, everything points to Alex Cox. The question is, now, I guess, what did Lori know? What did Chad know? Did Chad do anything? Chad, the grave digger, did he do anything? And what did Lori know? Because Lori is saying nothing, right? There hasn't been any evidence that, like, Lori is concerned or worried about her kids not being around.
No, in fact, they've heard really the opposite so far, in that she knows where they are, that they're safe, that she can't tell where they are. There's been many recordings, right, played so far for this jury where she has not expressed concern, and it's shown that she hasn't reported them missing, or she didn't report them missing in the months that they were. In fact, it's shown she was in Hawaii and getting married and having a good time with her new husband.
Yeah, this becomes a little tricky. A lot of cases we cover, it's about the DNA, it's about the fingerprints. Jurors love that. That gives them confirmation on facts. But in this case, obviously, conspiracy is really the stronger case for the prosecution, because they don't have that. They don't have Lori's. And if Lori's DNA is found anywhere close to the children, well, she's the mother anyway, so it doesn't. But the bag, that is huge. All right, Shanley Painter, great reporting as always. I know we will speak again. When we come back, we're going to bring in our forensic experts and go through all of this evidence, go through the autopsies, the burial site, all of that, to give some perspective and insight into what this jury has heard and what exactly it means. Plus, coming up next hour.
When her children were first reported missing, Lori also went missing. Was she fleeing from police? And does this prove her consciousness of guilt?
How come they're not here? You don't even know where they're at. We don't even know where they're at now.
When you say they, who are you talking about?
Lori and Chad. We don't know where Lori and Chad are at. What is happening?
It's a mystery that's captivated the nation.
This stretch is just so beyond what anyone could imagine.
And left a trail of dead bodies.
Lori Vallow Daybell,
accused of triple murder, including her 2 youngest children.
You'll hear every dramatic moment.
Money, power, and sex. That's what this case is about.
Just tell the truth. It's that simple.
The Doomsday Cult Mom Murder Trial. Coverage continues weekday mornings only on Court TV.
I determined the cause of death to be asphyxia by plastic bag over the head and duct tape covering the mouth. And then there's another segment that's other significant conditions. I put bound with duct tape, bruising to the arms, and abrasion to the neck. But ultimately, the cause of death was asphyxia by plastic bag over the head and duct tape over the mouth.
That's the testimony of Dr. Garth Warren, the forensic pathologist testifying for prosecutors in this case, describing what happened to that little 7-year-old boy, J.J. Vallow. This testimony is significant, and for me, this is the reality moment in the trial. You know, we're hearing all this testimony about this bizarre behavior by Lori Daybell and Chad and their band in the cult. And that's all fine and well, trying to figure out what's going on here. But ultimately, this is what happened. This is the result. A dead 7-year-old boy and his sister. So we're going to take some time now to dive into the testimony of the forensic pathologist. We're going to bring in our experts in just a second. Here's more testimony from Dr. Garth Warren.
There's fairly extensive skin slippage throughout the body, including partial degloving, or skin falling off of the hands and the feet. And that was essentially what I found. I also found some injuries that jumped out. One injury was a scratch. There were abrasions, appeared to be scratch-like abrasions on the left side of the neck. And angle.
Doctor, if I can ask you, why was that significant to you?
That was significant to me in a case like this, considering the way he was found. If there's any kind of injuries to the neck, you know, it's a red flag. Do I know exactly what it means? No, but I think some of the things that come to mind are, was JJ trying to get the bag off his head? And could they be scratch marks trying to get the bag off of his head? I wasn't there. I don't know exactly what happened, but those are the types of things that go through my head.
All right, let's bring in our guests, our experts tonight. In Jacksonville, Alabama, forensic death investigator, host of the Body Bags podcast, and professor of forensics at Jacksonville State University, Joseph Scott Morgan. And from Monroe, North Carolina, forensic criminologist, Dr. Laura Petler. Thank you both for being here. Joseph, let's start here. Listening to the words of Dr. Garth Warren, knowing some of the facts surrounding what happened to JJ here, what are your thoughts about how he died and how he suffered?
Well, this diagnosis that we're talking about relative to the bag over the head, this is what we refer to as a diagnosis of exclusion, because they don't have anything else to hang their hat on. Dr. Warren did a fantastic job with this autopsy. They documented JJ's body prior to even opening these bags that he was cocooned in. They did extensive x-rays from the top of his head to the soles of his feet to look for any kind of projectiles, fractures, perhaps a broken knife blade, anything that might indicate some type of ferocious trauma. They didn't find anything. So Dr. Warren is left with this conundrum. How do I classify this death? Well, obviously the manner is going to be homicide. You've got a young boy that is buried in what we refer to as a clandestine grave. That means out of sight, hidden from view. And you've got a mode of death here where we know that if you place a bag over a child's head and you wrap it with tape, that this is going to exclude oxygen. And the other contributing factor here, Vin, is the fact that he was bound. One of the most chilling things was the fact that, how you described these bindings on the wrist. JJ's wrists were actually overlapped like this, where you have the wrist bound together. And that's something that you see in a movie, in a hostage situation, or where you're binding a prisoner. And this little baby was there, bound like this, and had been there for a protracted period of time.
Dr. Laura Petler, let's take a listen to more from the forensic pathologist here, talking about some of the other injuries that JJ sustained.
Doctor, in regards to the bruising you found on JJ's arms, are you able to make any type of determination if that is pre or post mortem?
Based on my findings, I believe the bruising in the arms is ante-mortem.
When you say ante-mortem, is that before?
Yes, before death.
Okay. And what leads you to believe that?
Well, essentially, because, well, one, they looked like bruises when you just looked at them. And then two, when I made the incisions and there was hemorrhage in the soft tissues and subcutaneous tissue, it definitely suggests that it was ante-mortem. When somebody dies, there's no longer circulation. So if, for instance, somebody's picked up after they're dead by the arms, you wouldn't expect bruising, especially in this subcutaneous tissue like you saw in that case, in this case.
Dr. Laura Petler, what did this little boy go through?
So, you know what, Vinny, as I'm listening to the pathologist, I agree with Joe Scott. He did an excellent job. And bruises are essentially bloodstains on the body or on the skin. And the fact that there are bruises is indicative of a potential struggle between JJ and whoever it was who was attacking him. So to answer your question very directly, I think that he did suffer. I think it's extremely sad that he did, but it also appears that he might have fought back and fought for his life. And the bruises on the body being ante-mortem as opposed to peri-mortem or even post-mortem mean that the heart is still beating. That's what the pathologist is saying in so many words. He's saying that there's circulation going on and that the heart is pumping blood, and therefore when there's an impact to the body can suffer an injury of which there then can be subcutaneous hemorrhage. So it's indicative of pain and suffering.
One of the other issues that came up, and the question raised a lot of eyebrows, was whether or not JJ was drugged at all. Let's take a listen to the doctor describing the toxicology results.
In the toxicology report, there were low levels of ethanol, so alcohol. There was a substance or a drug called GHB, gamma-hydroxybutyric acid. There was also a substance called theobromine, and I believe there's also caffeine.
Do you know what theobromine is?
Theobromine it can be found in cocoa and tea products.
And GHB, what is that?
So GHB, gamma-hydroxybutyric acid, it's a drug, or one, it can be a drug, and it can be used for medicinal purposes or recreationally. For medicinal purposes, sometimes it can be used for narcolepsy. I think at one point in time it was used as a possible anesthetic or for anesthesiology. Recreationally, it's often referred to as liquid ecstasy. Some refer it to as a date rape drug. GHB was found, so we know through literature, the medical literature, that GHB can be found in tissues, including liver, post-mortem. So there's really no way for me to tell for sure whether this is just a naturally occurring product in the body that was there, or if JJ was given GHB.
Joseph Scott Morgan, what's your takeaway from the toxicology here?
It's inconclusive. I think that many of us, when we were thinking about, remember that image or that image that was painted for us about Alex carrying little JJ on his shoulder. He was wearing the same pajamas in which he was found, Ben, remember? And they said he was sleeping. Many of us have opined over this period of time that maybe he had, in fact, been drugged. However, the fact that you can't get you can qualify it, but you can't get a quantitative amount of GHB because it is occurring in the decompositional process. And if we'll reflect back to one other case that's kind of similar to this, you think back to the Anthony case where there was a presence of chloroform in that case. And chloroform is a product many times of decomposition. So it would be present, but you can't hang your hat on it quantitatively to say that there is a lethal amount in his system. It does bring into question, I really wonder how this is going to impact the jury when they hear GHB, they hear date rape drug. How is that going to, kind of resonate with them, and particularly what they were seeing and subjected to on that screen as they were looking at these autopsy photographs.
And it really has significance in two ways. One, maybe there's an upside to it that there'll be less suffering. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't look into the eyes of his killer. But on the other hand, that would have happened in Lori's apartment, and that would give a direct connection to this defendant in this trial.
I got to hang on, Ben. I got to say something right here, and dovetailing with what Laura said. Make no mistake about it. This child suffered. He had an awareness. You don't come away with these contusions that he had without having fought back. This is a primal response to having your airway blocked by a bag over your head. He is fighting, Ben, for his life. He had an awareness. This is a horrific death, an absolute horrific death. So I think that there's a diminishment of the issue with GHB here. I think that he knew that he either had to fight or he was going to die, at least at a primal level in his brain. His brain is literally screaming out for oxygen. Anybody that can't identify with this, just think for a second if you've ever been short of breath and what it's like to struggle with that. That's what JJ was going through.
All right, our guests are staying with us. When we come back, we're going to turn our attention to Tylee Ryan and her autopsy. Don't go anywhere.
Quiet Colorado community rocked by a tragedy.
11-year-old Gannon Stout disappeared from his home.
Gannon's stepmother, Letitia Stout, is charged with his murder.
Stout allegedly killed her stepson and then drove his body across the country.
Now, the jury will decide her fate.
She has a tough road ahead.
As a family searches for justice.
She will pay 100% for this heinous thing she done.
The stepmother murder trial. Live coverage continues tomorrow morning, only on Court TV.
Dr. Warren, based on your autopsy of Tylee Ryan and based upon your education, training, and experience, have you formed an expert opinion concerning the cause of death of Tylee Ryan?
Yes.
What is that cause of death?
I determined the cause of death to be homicide by unspecified means. So homicide by unspecified means is a term that is or can be used for the cause of death when the forensic pathologist has essentially looked at the totality of the case, including the circumstances of the death, the autopsy findings and lack thereof autopsy findings in this case, the toxicology, and also based on medical and social records, that the forensic pathologist, which is me in this case, feels that the cause of death was by homicide, but I just can't pinpoint exactly what that was.
And that's Dr. Garth Warren, unable to pinpoint it because of what was done to Tylee Ryan's remains and how outrageous it was. Let's listen to more of the testimony so we have a more complete picture of what happened to this young girl.
Tylee's case was different. It was received by me Tylee's remains were received in 3 separate sealed bags. One of the bags, or two of the bags, were black body bags, and the third was a large brown paper bag that was sealed, and within that contained 5 other paper bags within it. So I received Tylee's remains in multiple different bags. So any kind of fire death, in this case we knew we were dealing with burnt remains. We tested for carboxyhemoglobin. So carboxyhemoglobin or carbon monoxide in fire is often released along with multiple other gases. And if that is breathed in and the person is alive, then you'll get a high carboxyhemoglobin saturation level. So that's why we even did that test. In this particular case, the carbon monoxide level came back extremely low, meaning that there's no evidence to support that Tylee was alive when she was burned.
Thank goodness for that, right? But what happened here? Let's bring back in Joseph Scott Morgan and Dr. Laura Cutler. Laura, your thoughts about what happened to Tylee Ryan here?
My very first thought, Vinnie, is that this victim is very different from the first one. In JJ's case, we saw that the offender wanted to cover the eyes and kill that way. In this case, I think that it's possible that something very different happened here. There could have been a tremendous more amount of evidence left on the body. The body is evidence itself. The fact that the stab wounds that in the bones that the forensic pathologist testified to were in the pelvic region very specifically. That's a very, very specific location. And is it reflective of the dark spirit location of what they talked about, that Lori Daybell talked about her daughter being a zombie and her children being zombies? So those are my initial first thoughts of how different it is. The fact that, you know, one's with plastic, one it could be anything, but they didn't rule on the manner, on the cause of death. He ruled on the manner of death, and they just don't know. And fire is often used to cover up other crimes and other evidence, and it's possible that could be happen here, or it was used to remove the demon or the zombie.
Here's testimony from a second expert, Dr. Angie Christensen, a forensic anthropologist. Let's listen.
So these are the 2 hip bones. This is the right side and the left side. And the sacrum is the one right in the middle at the base of the spinal column.
Okay. And that's areas where you found evidence of sharp trauma?
Yes.
Something sharp, you know, a knife or a hatchet or something of the like caused injury in this area?
I can't identify the specific tool type, but it was something with a small surface area, such as a beveled edge or a point.
Joseph Scott Morgan, we've heard about a pickaxe that had some DNA on it. What does it take to dismember a 16-year-old girl and prepare her to be burnt in a fire pit?
Well, you wouldn't go about it with a pickaxe or even a shovel, which they also had access to there. They were talking about hatchets. I even heard the term cleaver used at one point in time. This is something that's highly unskilled. It sounds frenzied. If that's what they're attempting to do, my thought is that there is a high probability, based upon what I'm hearing, is that her remains were actually taken out there after death and set ablaze. There's evidence they did, in fact, find evidence of accelerant on Tylee's remains and the surrounding area. They took those and found that gasoline had been used to initiate the fire. The problem with rendering down whole human remain is that, let's just say that we're talking about a crematory, you know, people are familiar with. That has to burn at a constant 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit in an enclosed space with a natural gas supply. You can't do that outdoors. It's called fire tending. You have to apply fuel like wood, turn the fire, roll the elements contained therein. you're not going to generate sufficient heat. I would imagine they got greatly frustrated while they were trying to do this. The injuries that we're seeing are indicative of somebody that had not planned this out. Your pelvis is not typically an area that you're going to go to because it's one of the most robust areas of the body to try to do a dissection. You go to the joint, and you have specific types of tools like saws and knives that you facilitate this with. And they did particulate the body to a great degree. As you heard, Dr. Warren received the body in 3 separate bags, but there was still soft tissue left in. We had heart, we had lungs, we had partial liver, there was still bowel left. There was even some extruded brain. And it's hard to, one of the tough things about fire as it's introduced into a body's environment like this post-mortem is that you have to delineate between what are referred to as heat-related fractures of bone and antemortem fractures of bone or cutting. And then you have the post-mortem state, where you're doing dismembering. And so all of that stuff has to be delineated and understood. And it's a very difficult task. And I'll close with this. JJ's autopsy took 4 hours, Finn. Tylee's took 5 days.
Wow. Great insight tonight. Dr. Laura Petler, Joseph Scott Morgan, always appreciate your time. I know it's valuable, and we thank you.